Hey there, traveler. Whatever time and space and place that you might be, I hope you might come to peace. I hope you might be able to transmute that peace and kindness into some kind of outward positive reaction and energy and intention. Whatever time and space you might be at this point, coming back to the now, maybe doing a quick little body scan, seeing how your mind-body connection incorporates around the environment you find yourself as a part of. Still disorganized, bustling and quiet, all different states of being that we could find ourselves in. Coming back to the breath. Just taking those breaths for a moment. As long as we are currently in this form, and if you are human, breathing is an integral part of our experience. And no matter what time and place we're at, we can always come back to. We spend so much time going outside of ourselves trying to do that we forget about those automatic structures, those ingrained systems that we have inside our own selves, like breathing. Sometimes it's important to take the extra moment to bring attention to that. It's easy for us to examine the things we don't like sometimes, right? These are all different points and contentions that, that makes me uncomfortable. Let's go explore that, right? Sometimes it's harder to see your bias in the things you like. I think we can all understand wanting something so bad that we've been blinded to the consequences of that want, or maybe been infatuated with someone and pushed away others and ourselves or them even because of that, right? When we like something, we create this world of it in our own heads, right? This definition, this point of view, this perception of things, right? And even in the things we love, that's still just this reality that we've created for ourselves. It's easy sometimes to, like I said, project outwards and understand why we dislike something more so than why we do like something. Oftentimes myself, I find myself, I don't know, I just like it, right? Or something like that. Not sure exactly what that rush of dopamine was caused by. I think one fun example that we can use for this week's question of the week, though, to kind of bring an example into this and to understand that even the things we like are still independent of the reality we create for them. But at the same time, be able to understand our relationship and why our motivations are the way they are. So this week we are going to examine 5 animals that we are prejudiced against. Now for me, for example, I think the number one thing, I should actually correction that. No, that's not exactly right. I already butchered the question of the week without it actually being fully said. What are 5 animals that you are prejudiced in favor of? What are the things that you have bias in favor for? The number one for me, I would think, is felines, cats. Up until a few years ago, was not aware of this bias myself, to be quite honest with you. I always had appreciation for big cats, and cats were the first animals that I had as a kid, but we had gotten rid of them pretty early on. And it wasn't until I eventually rescued, my son Gary, and especially Bean and now Persephone, has really created this real big appreciation for those little feline dudes. I really do attribute, specifically cats, as a big reason of my descent into different animistic beliefs and concepts of non-human agency. Taking the time to examine these little critters and see their brains process and think and have their own distinct personalities. See them grow and, love in their own individual ways, and to be able to communicate them as we've been able to, over the past 30, 40 years or so, really has some pretty cool growth and understanding of cat physiology and psychology. Seeing them be scared and be happy and be loved and be a little family, right? It's something that I've created a huge bias towards, and that's why they're probably my number one animal I'm prejudiced for. I love cats so much. Now, my little babies don't get any unsupervised outside time, because I do fully believe that my little beanie baby, she would very much cause the local extinction of some kind of bird species or something like that. I have no doubt in my mind that she wants to kill. You can get into the moral arguments, is it ethical to, house another predator, but at the same time, I'm not by any means vegetarian, and we've all known that. I've had those conversations about what is the morality of eating any kind of life, plants, animals, fungi, or any other things that it might be. I do know that outside of humans, cats have caused more, extinctions than any other animal. It doesn't mean that anytime I walk the streets, I won't see a little fuzzy little friend and be like, hey, I'm trying to get them pet rats and try and take them home with me. The goal, I guess, is to have some kind of, as we get involved in these rewilding efforts and continue to try and help and restore, definitely want to get involved with a sanctuary of some kind and take care of the, bird bees. It's one of the things that brings me the biggest pleasure and joy in life, period. I think the second animal that I fundamentally have then the most bias prejudice for is humans. I'm going to keep this one probably pretty short in comparison, because I actually think that humans, for the most part, are a pretty scary species too, when you think about it on a large scale. Up until very recently, though, I think you can make the argument that we've lived in a pretty harmonious way for the most part with the natural world, or at least a much more tenable way with the natural world. I think that at this point that we're at right now, during the Anthropocene causing another global extinction event, it's pretty scary to think about some of the horrors that I know individual humans inflict upon each other, even, right? In the end of the day, I do fundamentally still believe in people. I see the kindness and the people that I have been lucky enough to walk this journey with. I see amazing stories of resilience every day, and I see people continue to grow and be kind and show compassion and try to do the next right thing and be a part of this experience. So that gives me a lot of freaking bias towards them. I might individually like to be off in my own little world and experiencing my own reality within my chosen community, and ideally with a few cats too, right? I do think, though, that fundamentally I do have an incredible bias towards humans. I think it's something that, not to be a homer for my own species, I think humans are capable of fundamental radical change and can actually do some pretty cool fucking things. And I think we can continue to have this experience. I really just hope we can continue to develop in sustainable ways. Now, my next bias is to maybe detach from reality a little bit here. But the third quote-unquote animal that I have bias, prejudice for in favor of would be dragons. Now, I refuse to live in a reality that doesn't acknowledge dragons as real in some way, shape, or form. It's a hard part of any world I want to live in. I understand we have Komodo dragons. I understand that we have dinosaurs that essentially evolved into birds, and that is in its own way, especially depending on the type of dragon origin tradition that you find yourself in. But I'm just going to straight up say that, whatever kind of dragon you are envisioning, that is a real part of reality in whatever way, whether that is in some kind of overmind, collective consciousness, or whatever we want to say, it's a physical reality being into it. And I understand we get the value of Komodo dragons, again, water dragons too as well. But yeah, I'm just going to say that the representation that dragons have continuously had throughout different cultures and mythos, right? It's just some kind of lore, and just behemoth thing that I've really always resonated with and really found a lot of in stride kindness with. And while always not being raptured in by big, scary, spicy puppy, I think that I also get lost in just a lot of the notions of the symbology that they represent, right? Anything that has a dragon product to it, I instantly am more gravitated to it. So I see this as a bias that is very implicit in actually how I live my life, right? I'm more my favorite tea is Little Black Dragon tea, right? For a reason. I love some oolong. Dragon is a part of that, right? So it's creating these different representations. I don't know, even in my own headcanon for itself, right? And that's why I have a lot of bias in my, even if it's not considered a real animal by some, I do consider a lot of bias in my everyday life towards the dragons. And that's something that, whether real or not, I do actively base my personality and make actions around, so I do act as if it is real, and I think that's kind of the real magic of life as it is. The next answer I think will be a little bit of cop-out when I come to 4 here. I'm going to go ahead and go with just large predators. Similar to the dragon concept, I just love a big baby that is at the top of the food chain, quote unquote, and that is actually just there as an integral part of it, and realistically is a really important sign for healthy ecosystems. I believe that I'm pretty clear on my positions when it comes to radical land redistribution. I think I want to highlight it a little bit more intentionally. What I mean by that, I don't mean just simply radical land redistribution to humans. I believe to non-human entities are a fundamental part of that as well. I don't know exactly what ratio and what percentages need of the earth needs to be broken down, but I'm a big proponent of advocating for, I don't know, large tracts of land just continuously considered wild and wilderness state. I love to live in harmony, humanity is able to share a majority of the globe in this still wild condition, quote unquote, right, where humans have minimal impact in the ecosystems on it, outside of maybe maintaining some caretakers of the garden, quote unquote, situations, right? How we've had prescribed burns and different, and things like that, and wildlife conservation and everything. But maybe even to even go more extreme like that, there's portions outside of that where humans are even less involved, right? And I think that these should be areas that are continuously designated as sanctuary areas for large predators. Whether that be grizzly, polar bears, lions, tigers, great white sharks, dragons, anything like this. Any of these kind of keystone species, if you will, when it comes to the animals have been heavily persecuted, specifically by humanity in the past. Wolves are a great example of this, right? I believe in the heavy reintroduction of wolves to different ecosystems. I believe in these different communities living in harmony, and I know that's really easy to say from me sitting in my chair right here, not having to worry about tiger attacks, to get water and stuff like that and everything. I do think that there's different mindfulness, and we need to figure out just how to be able to give animals of these orders and magnitudes, the ones that we've been in traditional competition with for localized resources and basic security and safety. When we're talking about the security and safety of local as a resource, I do think that we need to fundamentally alter our equation with that, and I have a huge bias towards anything like this, and I get very conflicted feelings about how I see these in any kind of captivity. I do believe that there are certain benefits, especially the sanctuaries and rescues, and especially the breeding programs that have been helpful in restoring different populations. But these are also species that have been heavily exploitation, have been involved heavily in exploitation for profit, specifically, and whether it be through medical industries or just through entertainment industries and privatizations of zoos. And I really struggle with it, I think as anyone should with any kind of intelligent animal being behind bars without proper, stimulation. I think of that very often with myself. I joke to myself if that, I remember I saw it online at one point. Does my cage have enough stimulation, right? Does my enclosure have enough stimulation or kind of understanding it as that, right? Or am I just kind of going through the same patterns and examples? And when I'm just going through those concrete, low patterned, low recognition environments and enclosures, my mental health suffers. But if I'm able to have those homes and make it into my own hearth and be able to surround it with stimuli that engages in healthy ways, well, then I do pretty well. Well enough to have maybe a fifth animal I do have a little bit of a bias of. And I'm going to go with cicadas on this one. And this is one because I find myself having a contrast in a year that we've had some kind of super blooms of cicadas throughout the year. Apparently these are ones that a lot of people have a bias and prejudice against. The reason why I think I have really one in favor of is because of where I grew up. Growing up in the desert and in an environment where, for me, the cicadas really were the sound of the monsoons. The sound of the rainy season, the beginning of that. Once the cicadas would start going, that's when the rains would begin, because it would get humid enough, and it would just, all those conditions would align right? And those are the natural cycles of the world where I came from. Anytime I hear a cicada, I go into that kind of baseline, not even survival, not living, but this just anticipation for the rains, is knowing that everything is where it should be. And I think it's a really calming thing for me individually. Having that individual thing, I think, makes it pretty much worthy of having that fifth spot of a bias. Now, these rankings in order were by no means any hierarchical order. They were just the ones that I was rambling off the top of my head. But I do think those do give a point of highlighting that these things that we have prejudices of for in all these different ways have different reasons and different meanings for why we have prejudices for them, right? Why do we actually care about them, whether they're normative or personal or fantastical? I think it's always taking the time to examine your relationships to things that you have biases towards, and understanding why you have those biases towards them is, again, simple enough on how you can act, how you can choose to react and move forward. Wherever you are, traveler, I want you to know that you are enough. You can always take the time to slow down and come back to your breath. One day at a time, one step at a time, we are here to experience this journey. So go forth, do whatever it is you need to do. Take care of yourself. You are loved and you are enough.